For those of you who watch Safety by Rue, you're familiar that most of the time when I begin to talk about these safety subjects, I use some particular topic and we follow a particular line. However, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start interspersing some of our safety talks with some stories. The stories that I'm going to tell you are stories that come out of the last 46 years that I've spent in ironwork and steel fabrication and erection. And the reason I'm going to tell you these stories is because it's going to give you an opportunity to hear some of the things that either have happened to me or have happened to people that I know over the last few years. And they'll all have some safety point to them. So we're not going to depart from our theme of safety, but we are going to talk about some of these stories, and I hope that you find them interesting. I hope that they'll perhaps even challenge you, and I hope that you'll be able to make use of them in perhaps trying to communicate safety ideas to other people. Now, the first story I'm going to tell you today is a story about a guy called Sleeping Jesus. Now, that sounds like a funny name, but you have to understand that in the iron business, you're going to get a nickname. And although I didn't personally encounter this young man, the story that I'm going to tell you is one that was told to me by a friend of mine who was the foreman in a shop where this occurred. Now, Sleeping Jesus got his nickname because he had a beard and he had long hair, and he kind of looked like the idea of what you always see as pictures of Jesus. However, the thing about Sleeping Jesus is he always had his eyes about half closed, and he never really looked like he was quite with it. Now, in the shop where he worked, he was the bolt threader or rod threading machine operator. Now, for those of you who aren't initiated into what a rod threader is, you take a piece of rod, structural rod, and you put it into the end of the threader, and then you hit a set of jaws. You hit a lever that shuts the jaws, and when it shuts the jaws, then the threading machine, the teeth, will start to cut threads into the end of the rod. So for various structural reasons, we have to have these things, and so we take lengths of rod because they have to be custom made, and we thread them with these rod threading machines. Well, Sleeping Jesus, he ran the rod threading machine. Now, if you've ever dealt with bolt oil or cutting oil, it's very slick, very viscous, and it causes a lot of mess, really. And so what happens is you have gloves, and they may be pretty cheap gloves. They may be canvas back with a leather palm. So Sleeping Jesus had these particular kinds of gloves. Well, the more you handle these rods and the more you handle this bolt threading oil, then the greasier things get. So what he would do is he would put the rod in the end of the rod threading machine. Then he would hit the handle, and when he would hit the handle, then it would slap the jaws shut. Well, the problem with that is this. He had done this so much, he had done this so often, that he got a little complacent, got a little careless. So what happened was that one day he took a rod and he slapped the rod in the end of the machine, and then he reached up, and when he went to go slap the handle so that the jaws would shut, the end of his glove got caught when the jaws slapped shut, and it grabbed the end of his glove. Well, his glove was still on his hand, and when the jaws started to thread around, they didn't let go of the glove, and he wasn't fast enough to reach up to get the jaws open. So what happened was it pulled him over top of the rod, and then it pulled him over the top of the rod again, so there was 2 times that it spun him around. And by the time Sleeping Jesus came up for air, his eyes were as wide as they had ever been in anybody could remember. So it woke him up, Well, here's the problem. He had done this so many times that he just got careless. And that's the problem. When you're doing iron work, now you might be running a machine, or you might be doing something else. You might be rigging beams. You might be moving beams around in a shop or out in the yard or on a job site with a forklift. And you've done it so many times. You've had so much exposure to it that you start to just get careless. And you've done it over and over and over again. And when that happens, sometimes you get caught. And when you get caught, you end up like Sleeping Jesus. Now, it didn't really hurt him very badly. It just shook him up. But the end could have been a lot worse. Those machines can break an arm. They can snap a finger. These kind of things can happen. They happen just that fast. So, the thing I want you to remember about this with regard to safety is, remember when you're doing something you've done over and over and over again, pay attention. Be present in the moment. Don't mistake. Don't get too complacent. And don't make the mistake of thinking that you can get away with it without having to really pay close attention to what you're doing. Because in that amount of time, just that fast, you can end up like Sleeping Jesus, getting wrapped around the rod two or three couple of times and shaken up pretty badly. That's our story from the steel for today. I guess we'll probably call these Roo Tales, but try to remember next time you're doing a job, even if you've done it many, 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 many times, pay close attention, because these things can happen in a flash, and then it can get very bad very quickly. Thanks very much for listening. We'll be back another time.